Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Since we're getting into the update season, I thought what I would do is talk about the hopes that I have for it. Obviously, when it comes to War Thunder, they do 5 major updates a year, and usually a smattering of events during them nowadays. We're on the second event of the year already with the F5, and we'll probably get a naval event pretty soon after it, since that's generally what goes on. But in this video, let's talk about the general stuff I want to see in the next major update, which plays off the things that they've talked about before in terms of the Q&As and also, some of the sneak stuff, but mainly just stuff I want to see. The first part of this, which I think would be beneficial for everybody, is just straight up RP reductions for vehicles. We haven't had a big RP reduction for areas in maybe a year and a half. It's been a long time since we've had some kind of reduction. They've introduced a ton of new vehicles. I understand that usually they wait until a rank has been added for these things to reduce, but overall you have so much in the game nowadays, and we're getting to a point where most people are not even playing like 5% of the game, and that is a real problem when it comes to it. It's becoming a real problem for balance, it's becoming a real problem for premium abuse, it's becoming a real problem with even thinking about adding new stuff to the game if nobody's actually gonna touch it. So for me, what has to come in for aviation, for ground, not necessarily for naval. I think naval's in a pretty good place right now in terms of the grind. But ground and aviation, they need to see some kind of RP reductions for vehicles in those areas of rank 6 and rank 7 getting into the higher echelons. As we talked about previously, if you actually have a look at kind of the rank 7 area specifically, you can grind out something like, let's say, an A7E, which is 294,000 RP for all of the modifications on it. And if you compare it to that F15E, which is at rank 8, it's 314,000 for all the modifications. So the difference between these two vehicles fundamentally is 20,000 RP, which is the equivalent of 1 or 2 games. And they are 10.7 and 14.0 respectively. The A10C is 298,000 RP, and the A7E itself is 294. There is 4,000 RP difference between their modifications, and they are a whole 1.0 BR apart. This is a problem, and it's meaning that a lot of people are skipping a bunch of the vehicles in the game because there is no need to grind them out because they're not in the greatest place compared to others. So not just an RP reduction in the total amount of these vehicles, they need to start thinking about actually prioritizing certain modification grinds over others, because some of them are a lot tougher than others in terms of how the vehicle plays, and also which vehicles rely more on their modifications than others. But the fact that you have a vehicle that is at 10.7 and you look at a vehicle at 14.0 and they basically have the same amount of modification RP cost, no wonder people are just skipping past these and getting to the bigger stuff, because it takes you the same amount of time to grind both of those out, and obviously one is going to be a much better experience than the other. This is the whole issue with what we had before in ground, which is still there, by the way, where it's, oh, do I play the Leopard 2A7 V, which obviously is quite a nice vehicle to play at the highest echelon of the game, or do I play a Florakrad, which is very limited in terms of what it can do, and they basically have the same modification cost overall. This type of idea needs to be looked at to try and promote vehicles that aren't as good as others or don't fit the meta as well. Otherwise, you're just going to get more and more meta-defining vehicles. Another thing is bonuses across the board for similar vehicles in research. So we've talked about this before, but a simple thing could really be implemented. If you have researched and completed research on a Leopard 2A4, and you also have done all of the modifications on it, maybe you get a percentage discount if you play another Leopard 2A4 in a different tech tree. Or maybe a Sherman, like the standard Sherman, the 75mm Shermans, or the 76mm Shermans, or maybe even the Bulldogs, since I think we have 3 of those in the game, and we're probably going to get more, disregarding the premium one. So in general, having something where it gives you an incentive to play other tech trees. The daily bonus stuff that they've done is fantastic. It's a really nice addition. I really like it, but expanding upon it to make it more individual vehicle based, I think would be really good. And it would also give people an incentive to play other things, and that, once again, is a problem that we have right now, where everybody's just playing either whatever is on sale right now, or is just playing the same stuff over and over again. And it's leading to some crazy conversations in terms of balance, and everybody just focusing on their own little thing because they cannot play enough stuff across the board. So just making it easier to get access to things. Think about the fact that they added 1 million Strellas or 1 million M44s or 1 million OSAs to all of these tech trees. They all are the same RP cost, kind of, or mostly. They're mostly the same modification cost as well, but you have to grind out the same thing over and over and over again on these vehicles. And people are just not interested in that. They get bored of it. But imagine if you spaded one of them and you got a discount for the next one. It gives you an incentive to actually do this instead of just use them as filler vehicles for AA, which is basically what they're there for. I'd also like to see the return of World War Mode, but in a different format. This would be a more individual format, more of a PvE/co-op format. I thought as a PvP format, it was kind of interesting, but it was fundamentally flawed when it came to its mechanics and also the way that the command structure worked. We've talked about it before, like World War Mode, and a lot of people have very hazy eyes about it, or, the grass is greener on it. But the general problem that World War Mode had was the competitive angle and also the balance of it because of that. It actually didn't make a lot of sense to force battles or to actually have battles on it. It was better just to, maneuver stuff around with the commander stuff. But the other part of it that was also incredibly important was the simple fact that they would just do balance changes all the time for it. And also the servers didn't work a lot of the times. And if you create a competitive game mode where one side is favored over the other, just like Enlisted found, everybody's going to play that one side because they're not going to want to be on the side which is losing. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if they bring it back as a PvE thing, if they bring it back as a squad thing where you all kind of co-op work together and do a bunch of missions and complete a campaign, and maybe, that changes an area of the map, that, maybe you have a world map and then each of the little areas are controlled by like different factions. And then if you win something that expands your faction, that would be something that's fun. I've fleshed out a little bit in terms of what I think would be kind of good. But you could also do seasonal events around that. Maybe you could have, let's say, the Ardennes Offensive for a month or two, and your squad gets together at specific times and you play specific missions against, whether it is players or whether it is against AI, and you kind of collaborate and work together to get stuff for your squadron. I think in general that would be really fun, whereas what we had before was not really fun. It basically fell apart very quickly, which is why it hasn't really been back. I'd also like to see the removal of the gambling mechanics, or they could just make the game 18+. Maybe that's something. Instead of having to skirt around all of these laws that exist to try and, make sure that minors don't gamble, if they are going to, which is what's going on in this game already, then I think what they should do is they should at least put the game to an 18+, just to go, forward with that. But trying to get that done is going to be impossible. So what I would like is them just to remove the gambling stuff. It's having a very negative effect on pretty much everything. You can see the depreciating effect, right? They're bringing in more gambling boxes. They're bringing in the GE boxes that we talked about, the item shop stuff. There's more RNG involved in the Warbond shop stuff nowadays with what they're bringing back and what they're not bringing back. And then also the auction house. So they're just bringing in all of the very negative mechanics, which are designed to pit people against each other and to drain you of resources without you getting what you actually want. This is a pretty standard tactic, happens all the time, not a surprise to see, right? So what I'd like to see is the removal of these, because there has to be something done eventually about this, whether it's from a law point of view, whether it's from another point of view, and then just replace it with an old event system where you can grind all events. So imagine if at this time of year, when you used to have like World War II Chronicles, or there was that ship event where I think you had the Leningrad ship, imagine if it just popped up and was like, hey, in 2016, this event happened. Would you like to participate in it? So you could basically get the old vehicles. Maybe you could pay like a fee in either an SL or GE to unlock the event. And then it gives you all the challenges that you have to do over the days. And if you complete the challenges, then you complete the event too. And then if you've already done the events in the past, well, I suppose you could do them again, but for less stuff, or maybe for coupons, or maybe because you already have the stuff, it doesn't really matter, and you can focus on the modern events which are going on. So basically a way of bringing back some War Thunder nostalgia, and also bringing back vehicles which people cannot get access to nowadays. Kind of similar to how they do the Mouse Anniversary event. Imagine if they had events where it's like, hey, so for a month, we removed this set of vehicles, or we had this event, you can now replay it. You don't need a separate game to do it. You could literally do it inside of War Thunder, and that would mean that people would get access to these things that were removed, and also it would make it, a lot better in terms of people, balance, because people could actually have these things in their lineups instead of just getting nuked by veteran players. The next one would probably be, some map changes. I would like to see some. Some of them have been pretty negative, but at least it's nice to see them move around. This is something which is obviously more specific to specific maps, so I think I need to probably do videos on each of them. But we talked about the Ardennes the other day, and the problems that map has, because it's just not in a good position right now. It's really, really in a tough place, and that's probably the biggest one. And then also the new map that they added, the kind of like Italian one. So obviously when it came to that map, they have already done like 3 or 4 changes to it already. So hopefully we can get some more stuff in. And then also just being a bit more quicker on the changes when it comes to it. I feel like in general, we had that Q&A in December where BVD talked about CAS being a problem. And, it's obvious that the balance between them is just not good enough. And it's been that way for quite a while now, and it's getting worse because people are getting more of this stuff and they know how to use it now. So what's ending up happening is, well, guess what? It just keeps getting worse at top tier over and over and over again. And so what they could do is they could do more rapid changes to either spawn cost or BRs for individual vehicles, which are the worst offenders, instead of having to wait for 6 months in order to do this. And that's kind of what's crippling this whole system, because it basically means, imagine if you get punched in the face like every day for like 6 months, and then at the end of 6 months, that person like goes away for, I don't know, like a year, and then they come back and then they punch you in the face for 6 months again. It's not really enjoyable. And that's why a lot of people are basically turning it off because it's very obvious there are problems. Problems have been noted. Like everybody's on the same page. There's problems here, but we're 2 months down the line after acknowledging the problems, right? So rapid response teams might be required for these things. I understand that like developers want to come up with like very, very clever things, and they like, waiting for certain vehicles to fix certain areas in certain ways, and they think that's how, to do this. And they look at a problem, and instead of that being the problem, instead, they have to change something else to fix that problem over there instead of the obvious thing. I just want things to be a bit more blunt in terms of how they try and balance this stuff, because the last few years hasn't been great. BVD actually in January of last year talked about how this was a problem, and then in December talked about how it was also continuing to be a problem, while also adding in more and more mechanics to make the problem worse. So yeah, we just need a bit more rapid response here in terms of these things. So therefore, people can actually have fun and not get frustrated at the game, which is definitely what's happening. Like I have to deal with it every day. When people ask me about it, they tell me their opinions about it, and I experience it for myself. and it's not very fun. So yeah, that would be cool as well. As always, let me know what you would like to see in the next update, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.